Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Expanded Friday. My name is Kenny Wisdom and I'm going to show you the Trevenant deck. So, Trevenant's been around for a while, and I think ever since ever since the break has been out at least, it's been a deck that's been, tier 1, maybe tier 1.5, depending on your metagame. So, the main idea behind Trevenant is that you have this Trevenant from X and Y, with the ability Forest Curse, locking your opponent out of playing item cards. So for a long time, this was the only Trevenant available, and it didn't really see much play because, it has a hefty retreat cost, a hefty retreat cost and a hefty attack cost. And some people try to play it with things like Gengar, to switch around, but generally until this guy came out, I didn't really see too much play, and this guy completely changed the game. So as you can see, the Silent Fear attack lets you put 3 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon. So every Pokemon is taking 3 damage counters. This can really play off of things like Shaman, which doesn't have too much hit points, any kind of evolutions, Phantoms, Night Marchers, any things like that that start out with low hit points are going to get absolutely wrecked by Trevenant. And yeah, Trevenant's all about combining things. So yeah, this attack doesn't do that much damage, but guess what? It's harder to do, or it's harder for your opponent to get out of it when you have Forest Curse active and they can't play their items. And yeah, Trevenant is a stage 1, but guess what? You have Jirachi, which lets you search your deck for a Wally, and Wally lets you play the Trevenant from your deck immediately. So it's kind of all about these cards that maybe individually aren't that powerful or don't seem like they work, but when they come together, they're really cohesive. You can kind of form this way of creating this deck that just kind of can absolutely destroy opponents if they're not prepared for it. In addition, we've got one Wobbuffet. Wobbuffet used to be a kind of card that you would start with a lot. The original deck list had a lot more of them, and you kind of wanted to start with it to slow your opponent down, but it turns out that having Bad Barricade affects both of you, and a lot of the time you don't really want your own abilities to be turned off. But the thing that Wobbuffet does for the deck now, and why we still include one copy of it, is because Psychic Assault can be great for those big EX Pokemon that have been hit by Silent Fear a few times, but maybe they live through it, and maybe you don't have time to build up another Trevenant. Well, guess what? You have a 120 damage on your Eviltal, boom, Psychic Assault's going to come up and take a knockout. Besides that, we have the Jirachi we spoke about, 2 Shaman, just kind of used for the consistency of the deck, and we have Mewtwo EX. So Mewtwo EX plays an interesting role. Side Drive is an interesting attack because you can combo it, adds with all the attacks in this deck with Dimension Valley. And a lot of people can kind of not see that coming. X-Ball matters, but it matters less than Side Drive, usually because you're not committing that much energy to the board. And the one thing that Mewtwo X is really good at is knocking out Shaman. So there's a play that you can make versus the Trevenant deck where you can it's called a Shaman loop, where you can kind of Sky Return a Shaman back to your hand, promote another one, Sky Return with that one, and kind of prevent Trevenant from ever knocking you out because they're not one hitting the Shamans, and you're kind of constantly cycling through them. And Mewtwo allows you to just kind of put an end to that, 120, take a knockout, and win the game. The lineup besides that is pretty standard. We do play 4 Bursting Balloon just to add some more damage counters to the board. When you're kind of focusing on playing 30 damage at a time, Bursting Balloon can kind of, in a way, act as 2 turns of damage. It doesn't exactly work like that because Silent Fear is also hitting the bench, but it just does add, some number of turns of more damage, which matters. The other interesting thing about the deck is it runs a energy removal suite and 2 Team Flare Grunt and 2 Enhanced Hammer. These are kind of necessary just to slow your opponent down. You really, sometimes item lock isn't enough, and sometimes when you can combine item lock with spread with knocking out energy, that can kind of all come together. The interesting thing about this deck is I think it's kind of part of the expanded Big 3. So if you listen to the episode of Experience Share, that actually is not out yet. It'll come out next week. We talk a lot about how Trevenant, Night March, and Yveltal are kind of the Big 3 of expanded, and I wanted to, in the weeks before Arizona Regionals, kind of highlight one of the decks. Trevenant is personally my favorite, and I think probably the one that people know how to play with and against the least. So that's why I've tried it out here as a good matchup versus Night March and a bad matchup versus Darkness, and kind of contribute to that rock, paper, scissors feel of the expanded format. So we're going to take a look. After we're done taking a look at this deck, we're going to go ahead and play a few matches with it. Going to go ahead and hop on the ladder, and that's something I actually wanted to talk to you guys about. So real quickly, My options for doing videos are either playing on the ladder or playing in tournaments. I'm not sure what you guys prefer. I think tournaments are shorter for me to do, so they're more quick and they're maybe more efficient less efficient for you to watch, but they have better competition. Whereas the ladder, um, it maybe is less competition, but maybe I can get in more games, kind of just physically in the time it takes me to make the video. I want to eventually move to playing a lot of my friends on PTGO. I'm gonna try to do that most of the time, just so we can have skilled players and real decks. But that's kind of inevitably just not always going to be an option. So I want to know which you guys prefer. Would you guys prefer the tournaments or doing the ladder or something else entirely? So let me know, and I'll see you for the first match. Hey guys, Kenny Wisdom here, gonna play the Trevenant deck that we just talked about. Tails never fails. We're gonna go first. That's a great sign with the Trevenant deck. Ooh, our opponent has Trevenant sleeves. Maybe we're playing the mirror match. That would actually be pretty awful, as we have a pretty bad opening hand, and the mirror match is not the most fun matchup in the world. I'll tell you that much. Scissor, okay. Let's play this Dimension Valley. And then I think we just have to end. It's unfortunate as it guarantees we will not get the turn 1 Trevenant, but we do have a Phantom here, and we can attach like this, and I think we're just going to have to end the turn. Next turn we'll probably evolve the Trevenant. Depending on the way that the board looks, we can go Jirachi, get an N, or Jirachi remove energy maybe. It'll depend on what we draw, but we're definitely going to need to... Actually, we're not going to do Jirachi Team Flare Ground for sure. We're going to need to draw cards next turn. We need to get this Shaman out of the active position, and we need to get Trevenant into the active, and we need to find energy. So it looks like our opponent is playing a metal deck. Oh, and they're going to go ahead and Wally. Attach and pass a turn. Not playing into our Bursting Balloon there. What a surprise. Our opponent only has 3 cards in hand, so I'm just going to go ahead and give up this Trevenant by using the Juniper. Alright, so let's go ahead and Ultra Ball, Wally, Lysander. We can go ahead and get the Shaman. I just really want to get the lock up here, so we are going to go ahead and use the Shaman. Draw a couple of cards and hope to hit an energy, and a Floatstone would be great, but just energy works too. Let's go ahead and retreat to Trevenant and pass a turn. So Scissor, let's see. So I played against this deck in Standard versus Ben Potter at Estates once, but I've never played against it in an expanded tournament. It seems like our opponent is doing a few different things here and not really doing much for what it's worth. They do have resistance to us, which is not a great thing, but not that big of a deal because of the Silent Fear attack. If we had an energy, I would love to just Team Flare Grunt here, but unfortunately I don't think we're going to be able to do that. So let's just go ahead and Juniper and hope to find an energy. And we did. Let's also attach the Bursting Balloon, energy there, and Silent Fear. So our opponent is still sort of ahead of us. If they draw anything, they can kind of start attaching and doing some actual damage. But because we have the item lock, their ability to draw anything seems pretty low. And we are working on building a second Trevenant up as we speak. So they're going to go ahead and do 50 to us. If they choose to do that, they're just going to have to go and pass so that the Bursting Balloon doesn't work. I'm just going to go ahead and not commit too much to this Trevenant in the active. We just don't really need to. We're going to be attacking for 2 energy either way as long as the Dimension Valley is out, so I'd rather kind of save that 3rd energy in my hand as a way to say, hey, there's 1 on each, what do I need to do here? The Scissor deck, I think, does play a lot of healing cards. Like it plays Olympia, which lets you kind of switch and heal, which kind of works with Gale Thrust as well, so that's something we have to be careful of. But, oh, our opponent's going to go ahead and concede. Yeah, they weren't in a great spot there. They were drawing pretty dead, so I don't really blame them for that. Interesting deck. I wish I could see more of it and see what was actually going on with it, but that's match 1, and we'll play a few more just to get some good games for you guys. Hey guys, Kenny Wisdom here, playing another round with a Trevenant deck. We are going to call Tails, because Tails never fails except for when it does. That's okay. Everything's okay. We can still win here. The Trevenant deck is interesting because it has the ability to, like, turn 1 going first evolve is, I don't know the numbers on it, but it is, something that you can do and something that happens a lot. But turn 1, like your first turn going second, evolving is actually just like kind of guaranteed. If not guaranteed, there's just so many different outs that you have that you can kind of rely on it. And so it's interesting in that usually if everything goes well for you, your opponent should only get 1 turn of items. Obviously there's games where you get unlucky and you don't get Trevenant until turn 3 or 4. And there's also games where 1 turn of items is just kind of enough for your opponent. They start with a great hand and can kind of just thin their deck out so much. But we have to start with Shaman here. But the ability for Trevenant to either just Wally turn 1 or Ascension turn 2 is just so powerful. And it's one of the things that really separates it from a lot of the other item lock decks, or even, before Trevenant Break-In came out and Wally came out and all this stuff before the deck was actually good, it's what kind of changed it. Looks like we're playing against Aromatisse. So we saw Florges in our opponent's opening hand. We see a Spritzy here. Most of the fairy decks, I think, are going to be based around... Ooh, wow, turn 1 Aromatisse are going to be based around... Ooh, this is not even the fairy transfer one. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now confused. 6 damage. Alright. Not too big of a deal there, fortunately. Interesting. So we could try to go for a turn 1 Wally, draw an energy, retreat, and kind of lock them with Trevenant. Which they're not putting too much pressure on us, so I think that's probably fine. Let's Ultra Ball like this first. And we're going to get a Shaman here, assuming it's not prized. And see if we can draw anything that helps us make that decision. So we don't draw the energy. That's fine. Let's still just go ahead and versus Seeker Wally. Hope our 3rd and 4th Trevs are not prized. They are not. Attach here. And pass the turn. So we didn't, because we started with Shaman and we didn't find a non-mystery energy, we weren't able to actually get the turn 1 lock there, but hopefully next turn we can find an energy or a way to draw cards and actually kind of have a way to do things here. Our opponent's not really doing much. They're going to confuse, they're going to actually 30 and retreat us, so we're really going to have to try to Sky Return next turn. But that should be fine. They're doing such a low damage output that I don't think it'll matter too much. But let's see what happens. Shaman draws a fresh 6. This is the one thing that I really don't like about the game right now, is that games take a long time, which, people have talked about the 50 plus 3 thing for a long time. But more than that, even, I think, just there's so many different effects. Trainer's Mail, look at the top 4, think about my hand for a while, shuffle back in, play another Trainer's Mail, look at the top 4, think for a while, shuffle again. Birch, let's go ahead and shuffle my deck again. I feel like there's so many shuffle effects that really, I feel like if all of these cards that said shuffle had a different kind of way about them, like they said put on the bottom of your deck, or just kind of they were designed differently so they didn't have to shuffle, I really feel like the games would be the 50 plus 3 best of 3 tournament format might just be fine. Like, I think that could legitimately shave minutes and minutes off the match clock. Drawing our 3rd Trevenant there is not exactly the best. We could Lysander here. We could Lysander the Spritzy, but they can just retreat, although I guess that costs them energy. Let's just save that for when it's a better play, actually, and ship the turn back. So we could end up actually losing to this Aromatisse deck. There's a lot. Oh, they actually have the Fairy Garden, too, so that would have been absolutely terrible. But, yeah, we could actually lose here if we don't start drawing anything. And if we draw something like a Juniper, that's not going to be great because we have 3 Trevenants in our hand, and we're going to have to really rely on this Trevenant to take us home. But we'll see what happens. We do have options. I mean, one of the things about the Trevenant deck is that if we do get set up, let's say next turn, we're able to just kind of get this Shaman out of the active and start Silent Fearing. I mean, look at this Pokemon, 90 hit points, 40 hit points, 110. Like, it doesn't take many Silent Fears, just completely wipe this board. Alright, Xerneas. Going to be doing some Geomancing, it would appear. And Evo Soda, going to go ahead and get another Aromatisse. Another Hug one. I would have thought that would be the Fairy Trans one to kind of have a, some diversity there. But our opponent does have 0 cards in hand. So we don't want to end here, but what we can do is Lysander up this Xerneas, pass, and then hope our opponent doesn't draw anything. And then next turn, if we don't draw an energy, we'll have to end or something, but that won't be the worst. Our opponent has 1 card. Is it useful? Is it an energy? Is it anything? Versus Seeker. Wow, what a top deck. Ooh, and they get to draw 7 even, so yeah, well. Alright, so I think now we're just on the plan of not caring about the Shaman. We'll just let them take the knockout. Oh, they're actually going to Geomancy. Interesting. So they're just going to actually build up their board, which really I'm just not afraid of anything on their board. I mean, they're powering up the Florges, but that just can't be that big of a deal for us, right? Let's go ahead and Bursting Balloon here because we just really need to hit something off of this N. And there we go. All right. So we actually hit kind of the perfect setup here. We can retreat, send up Trev, attach to it, and let's just go ahead and Silent Fear, spread those damage counters across the board. That little guy is knocked out. Drawing an energy prize isn't the best. Yeah, Flabebe's it's knocked out with 30 hit points. Nice. Alright, this is what I was talking about. We're right back in it now. Our opponent, we even gave our opponent more cards. They got a turn of Geomancing to build up their board a little bit, but I really feel like unless something crazy happens, we're in the lead here. We're going to have to find another Trevenant probably. We're going to have to try to, build up another Trev to carry us to this board, but it's possible that we even don't. It's possible that, we can just kind of sit back and not care here. Because our opponent just have so few hit points that, a 3, 4, 5 Silent Fears is all we need to completely wipe their board. They did Lysander, the Floatstone Shamans. They're going to go ahead and hug here, I assume. And that could be slightly annoying. Nope, they're just going to go ahead and concede. Yeah, I think they just kind of see the writing on the wall here. The great thing about Shaman is that even if you try to lock it out with something like Hug, we get to Sky Return, so not too big of a deal. But let's play one more game just so you guys can see how the deck fully functions. Hey guys, Kenny Wisdom here with our final Trevenant game. We are going to call Tails. Can we get the 2-1 starting? No, 1 and 2-1 going first in this video. Let's take a look at our opening hand. We could start Wobbuffet here. Let's see. If we start Wobbuffet, do we have a reasonable way of getting it out of the active position? Not really. I think it's actually safer just to start Phantom here because we do have Level Ball Jirachi for Trevenant. Not even going to play it on the bench because I don't want to open up to any weird Lysander tricks or anything. And that can kind of be one of the downsides of Wobbuffet, is I really feel like Wobbuffet now more than anything is kind of used as you're going to play it specifically when you want to lock your opponent out of abilities and when you need to clean up with Psychic Assault. but it's no longer really used as, a heavy 2, 3, 4 of count to start with, because so often you just need abilities. And our opponent doing nothing on turn 1 is a good sign. Let's see if the Jirachi's there. It is. Let's go ahead and get this turn 1 Trevenant. I would like to search my deck. Oh, I didn't check for the Wally, but we do have 3, so be pretty unlucky to prize all of the Wallies. Let's go ahead, get Trevenant. And we even get to... Do we even play the Dimension Valley? No, let's just save it in case our opponent has something here. And let's end the turn. So let's see if our opponent was just kind of sandbagging a supporter or something. It doesn't appear so. They just have actual nothing. So it'd be kind of strange for them to do that. They're going to Chilling Science here, but we're going to evolve, so that's not going to be a huge deal. Let's go like this. Like this. And then I'm not too concerned about coloring here. We have a lot of what we need, so I'm just going to go ahead and wait a few turns. If we draw a couple more Pokemon, sure, I'll colorless. If we draw another supporter, that's better for us. Not too concerned there. We kind of have everything that we need. Alright, here comes Tri-Edge. 3 heads. Wow, that's pretty good. Not actually going to take the knockout on us, though. Didn't expect that to happen, to be honest. Maybe we just don't have everything we need now. Let's go ahead and call race here and try to set up a little bit more. And we can just go ahead and Silent Fear. So now we're actually kind of in a weird position where our opponent's still not drawing much because of that triple heads on Tri-Edge. If they have another energy, they're going to take the knockout on us this turn. And we do have a Phantom with a Juniper in our hand, so I'm not too concerned about it, but this is the kind of thing where we can definitely start drawing poorly and they can take over the game. But do they have an energy? Let's see. Literal only card in the discard pile. They do not. They're just going to have to Chilling Sigh, and we stay asleep. Alright, alright. Let's just go ahead and Juniper. Hope to build up our second Trevenant here. That's exactly what we're doing. Don't think there's any way we actually get out of this. We already have an energy here, so let's just go ahead and end the turn. Let's see if our opponent's next top deck can be an energy. Hopefully our opponent would just kind of play it if it is. I've noticed sometimes, I don't know if it's lag or if it's just kind of thinking or what, but there's another Chilling Sigh. I was going to say a lot of our opponents on PTCGO tend to play kind of slowly, which is just kind of weird when there's things, like when there's things like, oh, I don't have any cards in hand, didn't play anything relevant last turn, drew 1 card, now what can I do? I tend to think that people in the Pokemon community need to play a little bit more quickly in general, though, so maybe that's just me. Gonna go ahead and draw 3 here. Yeah, not hitting too much. Let's just go and Team Flare Grunt that off and definitely stop them from having the Tri-Edge next turn, although we still are asleep and they're just going to go ahead and concede. Yeah, they didn't draw an energy and they could kind of see the writing on the wall. So we had a few concessions there. I think a lot of people just don't like playing against the Trevenant deck, which is fair, but I hope that kind of showcases the power of the deck for you. Even though we didn't play against the most competitive decks or have the most competitive matches, that's kind of sometimes what happens with the Trevenant deck, honestly, is that you kind of get in this position where, you're setting up the board, your opponent can't really do much, and it's just kind of a slow game of a, grind of a game until you inevitably win. So that was Expanded Friday. I'll see you right back here on Monday for Standard Monday.